What was fascinating about German New Medicine was that it was the first time anybody had actually looked at a person as a biological unit. So we didn't just look at you as the organs of the body, because what Dr. Hammer found was you cannot have a symptom happening at the organ level without the brain being involved, because the brain controls every organ in your body. So what he did in 1980, 81, that nobody's doing today, is that he brain scanned all his patients. And because he brain scanned all of his patients, he was a medical doctor actually working in a cancer clinic. Because he brain scanned all his patients, he found that every single person that had the same symptom, these rings will show up in the brain scan in the same area of the brain. So he started to map out the brain. He realized that that part of the brain must control this part of the body. And so there was a relationship. And then he took it a step further. He started to interview his patients to find out, before you got diagnosed with this condition, was there any unexpected distress you were dealing with in your life? And this is how he started to figure this out. That he realized that you can have 5 people all have a major loss in their life. Somebody died, they lost a child. But it didn't explain why one person gets an issue with his prostate, one person with the breast, one person with the colon, one person with the lung. There was no explanation. And so when he interviewed them, he realized that not everybody experiences the same conflict in the same way. That it's a subconscious, subjective perception in a split second. And so this becomes the foundation of his research. It's called the 5 biological laws, and he calls it GNM, or German New Medicine. So it's based on this idea that when we have an unexpected event in our life, something you don't anticipate. So yes, this could be a big event. Somebody died, somebody loses their job, somebody loses their money, somebody gets a divorce, right? That if that's a shock for you, you will subconsciously, the moment you experience it, perceive it as a specific theme. Anger, fear, loss, separation, abandonment. There's so many different types. Depending on how you experience it at that moment, it will create a measurable impact in the brain based on a CT scan. Where that impact will go will initiate changes in an organ controlled from that area of the brain that will now present as your symptoms. So this is now how we start to look at each condition. And so for me, the thing about this that's so fascinating is that it now gives you a clue when we have no explanation of why somebody gets this symptom when they're doing everything right, right? And in the 9 years since I've been learning it and using it in my clinical practice, it's amazing to see somebody that's a 45-year-old executive that runs every day, does yoga, eats only organic food, get diagnosed with a condition that nobody can understand why. Because everything in her life shows that she's living the healthy lifestyle. When you understand what GNM is telling us, we now know that there has to have been an unexpected conflict that preceded that. What was going on in her life that was unexpected and emotionally distressing? Because when our bodies experience that event, it will mobilize changes in the organ to assist you in dealing with that event. So do you see how this process right now, today, 2017, not even talked about? It's because no one's looking at the brain and no one's even asking what's happening in the person's life. Okay, so that's in general what, for me in 2009, really turned everything I had learned upside down. Because that now to me was making me step back and look at, okay, everything I'd learned about health, I have to revisit now. And so that's one of the things that was a real challenge, but it now explains why you will get better in 1 visit and you don't get better in 3 months. Because now I have to understand that if that back pain had no mechanism, meaning it's not because you fell on the ice, it's not because you got physically hurt. Obviously, if there's a physical trauma, that's a physical trauma. If there's no explanation, meaning you just woke up one day, you get up from your seat and your back gives out, there's an emotional component to it. And with the back, it has to do with feeling unsupported. I felt a lack of support. If your lack of support is your principal doesn't support you in something that you want to do, and that principal leaves to go to another school, you resolve that issue, which could present as low back pain. But that's a closed issue because that principal's gone. Your back pain is going to resolve quickly. If your back pain and who doesn't support you is your mother-in-law that now moves into your house that lives with you, doesn't matter how many times I treat your back, when you go home, you get reminded and triggered of the lack of support. So your back pain might become chronic until your mother-in-law moves back out. So do you see how this understanding of this emotional component is totally missing in how we're looking at health?